There is a question every woman must face at some point in her life. Will you live for approval, or will you live for authenticity? Approval feels safe. It keeps you accepted, admired, even celebrated for a while. But approval is fickle. It shifts with the winds of opinion. And it demands that you bend yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for your truth. Authenticity, on the other hand, is dangerous. It risks criticism, rejection, even isolation. But it is authenticity that gives you freedom. It is authenticity that gives you influence. And it is authenticity that writes your name into history. The world has never been moved forward by those who live to please. It has been transformed by those who dared to be themselves, fully and unapologetically. And in the end, every woman must decide, will I be remembered for how well I fit in, or for how boldly I stood out? Conformity is comfortable. It feels safe because it doesn't demand risk. It doesn't invite criticism, and it doesn't shake the foundation of what already exists. For centuries, women have been told to conform, to be polite, agreeable, and silent when their voice threatened to challenge the status quo. Conformity is rewarded with approval, with the illusion of belonging, and with temporary peace. But here is the truth: conformity has never built movements, it has never changed laws, and it has never written a single line of history worth remembering. When we look back at the women whose names we speak with reverence, we don't honor them because they blended in. We honor them because they chose courage over conformity, even when it came at a cost. Courage is rarely convenient. It demands that you stand in the face of rejection, that you bear the weight of being misunderstood, and that you willingly walk into a storm without knowing if you'll make it through. For women, courage has often meant standing against centuries of expectations, traditions, and rules designed to keep them in line. Think about the first women who demanded the right to vote. They weren't applauded when they marched. They were ridiculed, mocked, and even arrested. Yet their courage created a ripple so powerful that millions of women today walk into polling stations with the ability to choose their leaders. That simple act of casting a vote was bought with courage, not conformity. Courage requires us to ask uncomfortable questions. Why should women only be allowed to exist in certain roles? Why should they be expected to prioritize silence over self-expression? Why should obedience be mistaken for respect when true respect is earned through contribution and impact? Conformity tells us to stop asking these questions because asking threatens the delicate balance of society's expectations. But courage doesn't stop. Courage insists on asking, insists on challenging, insists on moving forward even when the path is unclear. That is why history belongs to the courageous. It's written by those who refuse to sit down and accept the world as it was handed to them. It's important to understand that conformity doesn't just silence the individual, it silences entire generations. When one woman decides to stay quiet to avoid conflict, she unintentionally sets an example for the young girls watching her. They learn that fitting in matters more than standing up. They learn that safety is more valuable than freedom. They learn that being liked is more important than being respected. And this is how conformity spreads, not as a personal decision, but as a generational inheritance. But the moment courage steps in, the narrative changes. A courageous woman doesn't just change her own life, she changes the story for every woman who comes after her. History is filled with women who embraced that responsibility. Rosa Parks didn't conform when she was told to give up her seat. Malala didn't conform when she was told girls shouldn't be educated. Marie Curie didn't conform when science was considered a man's domain. Each of them chose courage, and in doing so, they created a blueprint for progress. They showed the world that change never happens when we play small, and it never happens when we quietly accept the limitations imposed on us. Change happens when we dare to be bold enough to disturb the order of things. But courage is not about reckless defiance. It's not about breaking rules for the sake of breaking them. Courage is about conviction. It's about deeply believing in a truth so powerful that you can't ignore it, even when ignoring it would be easier. Conformity thrives on fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of being alone. Courage thrives on purpose. It says, even if they criticize me, I will continue. Even if I fail, I will try again. Even if I stand alone, I will not betray my truth. That mindset is what separates those who are forgotten from those who are remembered. Society often praises women for being well behaved, for following the script that was written long before they were born. But history doesn't remember those who followed the script. It remembers those who tore it up and wrote a new one. That is the choice we are faced with every day. Do we conform and protect ourselves from discomfort, or do we step into courage and open the door to possibility? One path keeps us invisible, the other makes us unforgettable. Conformity whispers, don't make noise, don't stand out, don't rock the boat. But courage speaks louder. It says, if the boat is headed in the wrong direction, it must be rocked. Conformity says, stay in your place. Courage says, define your own place. Conformity seeks approval. Courage seeks progress. And history is never kind to those who chose approval over progress. Every woman has within her the capacity for both conformity and courage. The question is not whether you possess courage, but whether you will choose it when it matters most. Will you lower your voice in the meeting to avoid being labeled difficult? Or will you speak up because your ideas deserve to be heard? Will you shrink your dreams to fit someone else's definition of what's appropriate? Or will you expand them to match your vision of what's possible? Will you live to be liked, or will you live to be remembered? Because the truth is, well-behaved women seldom make history. It is the courageous ones, the ones who risked disapproval, rejection, and even failure, that carved their names into the story of humanity. And the choice between conformity and courage is not just a decision for the few women we read about in history books. It is a decision that every woman faces every single day. Defiance has always been uncomfortable, but it has also always been necessary. Progress does not come from those who accept the world exactly as it is handed to them. Progress comes from those who look at the rules, the traditions, and the expectations and dare to say, this is not enough. Every significant leap forward in history, especially for women, has been born out of defiance. When society said, this is the way it has always been, defiant women responded with, then it is time for change. Without defiance, there would be no growth, no reform, no breakthroughs. Defiance is the spark that ignites revolutions, movements, and transformations that shape the future. To defy is to resist what others expect of you, to challenge the systems that confine you, and to refuse to shrink yourself to fit into the mold that has been prepared for you. For centuries, women were expected to live within the boundaries of silence and obedience. Their worth was measured by their compliance, not their contribution. Yet history proves that the women who defied these expectations are the very ones who created progress for all. They stepped outside the safety of approval and into the uncertainty of opposition, and in doing so, they redefined what was possible. Think about the suffragettes. Their demand for the right to vote was not met with applause, but with hostility. They were arrested, mocked, and even physically attacked. Yet their defiance cracked open the door to equality and democracy. Their courage to disobey unjust laws and challenge societal norms changed the course of history. Had they chosen conformity, millions of women today would still be voiceless in matters of leadership and governance. Their defiance became the foundation upon which new rights were built. Progress has never been gifted. It has been fought for. And the fight always begins with defiance. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus, her act of defiance ignited the civil rights movement in America. She wasn't trying to create a spectacle. She was simply refusing to comply with an unjust rule. But that refusal created momentum, and that momentum created change. The same is true for countless women across the world who dared to question, to resist, to push back against the walls society built around them. Their defiance lit the path forward not only for themselves, but for everyone who came after them. Defiance is often misunderstood as rebellion for the sake of rebellion, but it is much deeper than that. True defiance is rooted in principle, in the unshakable belief that something is fundamentally wrong and must be corrected. It comes from a place of vision, from the desire to leave the world better than you found it. When women defy outdated traditions, they are not disrespecting culture. They are reshaping it so that it can evolve, so that it can include voices that were once silenced. Defiance is the catalyst that transforms what was once unimaginable into what becomes undeniable. Yet defiance does not come without a cost. Those who choose this path often pay with criticism, with isolation, and with resistance from those who fear change. Society does not easily release its grip on the familiar. When someone challenges the rules, it threatens the comfort of those who benefit from those rules. That is why defiant women are often labeled as troublemakers, rebels, or radicals. But if being a troublemaker is what it takes to create progress, then trouble is a price worth paying. Because the alternative, silence and compliance, only preserves the very chains that hold progress back. Defiance also teaches us something: vital progress is not instant. It is not achieved with a single act, but through persistence in the face of relentless opposition. One act of defiance inspires another, and another, until the pressure for change becomes unstoppable. The women who refused to accept no, as the final answer, laid the foundation for generations to build upon. They endured the ridicule of their time so that future generations could inherit freedoms they themselves were denied. The world often tells women to be quiet, to be agreeable, to not disrupt the order of things. But order without justice is not peace. It is oppression. And the only way oppression has ever been dismantled is through defiance. By refusing to accept what is unjust, women have pushed open doors that were bolted shut. They have challenged the laws that were written to exclude them, the stereotypes that were designed to belittle them, and the traditions that were built to contain them. Every time a woman has said, "I will not accept this," she has shifted the world a little closer to progress. Defiance is not just about breaking barriers for oneself. It is about paving the way for others. A woman who stands up against discrimination in the workplace is not only fighting for her own dignity, she is creating space for the next woman to walk in with her head held high. A woman who defies cultural expectations to pursue her dreams is not only shaping her own destiny, she is expanding the definition of what is possible for every young girl watching her. Progress is always collective, and defiance is the contribution each courageous individual makes to that collective journey. There will always be voices that try to silence defiance. They will say, "This is the way things are." They will say, "Why can't you just accept it?" They will say, "You're asking for too much." But progress has never been made by those who ask for permission. It has been made by those who demanded what was right, even when the world said it was wrong. The truth is that every freedom we enjoy today, whether it is the right to vote, to study, to work, or to lead, exists because someone chose defiance over compliance. Defiance creates discomfort, but that discomfort is the birthplace of growth. It disrupts the illusion of stability and forces society to confront what it would rather ignore. Defiance is not easy, it is not popular, and it is rarely rewarded in the moment. But it is always worth it, because defiance, more than anything else, is what creates progress. Rebellion has never been free. It comes with a price, and often that price is steep. To rebel against the expectations of society is to invite resistance, criticism, and sometimes even punishment. It is to stand alone in a crowd of people who tell you to sit down, to be told you are wrong when deep inside you know you are right. Rebellion demands sacrifice, and in the moment, that sacrifice often feels unbearable. Yet history teaches us something profound. Though rebellion carries a heavy cost, the reward is legacy. Those who dared to rebel against the chains of conformity may have suffered in their time, but their names live on. Their ideas continue to inspire. Their courage becomes the inheritance of generations yet to come. When we think of rebellion, we must understand it not as reckless defiance, but as the conscious decision to resist what is unjust, outdated, or limiting. For women, rebellion has often meant challenging systems that define them only by their silence, their obedience, or their service to others. To rebel against these definitions was not seen as noble, but as dangerous. Yet the women who dared to rebel chose to pay the price anyway, because they knew that their lives could not simply be measured by comfort or approval. They were building something bigger than themselves. They were building a legacy. Consider the women who first pursued education when the world told them it was unnecessary. They were mocked, excluded, and told to stay in their place. Some were even denied entry into institutions, forced to learn in secrecy or under constant pressure. But their rebellion against ignorance opened the door for countless others. Today, millions of women pursue education freely because a few rebels were willing to pay the price of rejection and ridicule. Their legacy is not just in the diplomas earned, but in the lives transformed through knowledge. Rebellion often comes at the cost of belonging. Those who rebel are rarely embraced by their peers in the moment. They are criticized, ostracized, or labeled as troublemakers. But belonging in a broken system is not true belonging, it is captivity. The women who chose rebellion over acceptance understood that they might lose friends, family support, or societal approval, but they also understood that gaining legacy mattered more. Legacy is not about being liked today. It is about being remembered tomorrow for having the courage to challenge what others were too afraid to confront. Every act of rebellion is a seed planted. That seed may not bloom in the lifetime of the one who planted it, but it grows nonetheless. Harriet Tubman risked her life guiding enslaved people to freedom. Her rebellion cost her safety, security, and peace, but her legacy is freedom itself. She may not have lived to see the full fruits of her labor, but generations after her walk in the freedom she fought to create. This is the paradox of rebellion. You may not reap the rewards of your defiance, but your legacy ensures that others will. The price of rebellion is also internal. It requires the strength to live with uncertainty, the endurance to face opposition, and the resilience to keep moving forward even when victory seems far away. Rebellion often feels isolating. It means holding on to your truth even when everyone else insists you are wrong. It means being laughed at, dismissed, or ignored, and still refusing to give in. But in that isolation is also clarity. The rebels who make history understand that legacy is not built through the easy path, but through the hard one. It is not built by following rules, but by rewriting them. Rebellion is also generational. A woman who rebels in her time may not live to see her name celebrated. In fact, she may only know rejection. But her children, her grandchildren, and the countless people influenced by her actions will inherit her courage. The suffragettes, for example, endured prison, humiliation, and even physical abuse for demanding the right to vote. They paid a heavy price, and many of them died without seeing the day women finally cast their ballots. But their rebellion built a legacy that millions of women now carry forward every election day. The act of rebellion, though costly, creates a ripple that extends far beyond the individual and reshapes history itself. The price of rebellion is also misunderstood by those who watch from the outside. To the world, rebels may look like agitators, disruptors, or dreamers disconnected from reality. But what the world fails to see is the vision driving the rebellion. Rebels see a reality that does not yet exist, and they fight for it long before anyone else believes it is possible. That is why their legacy endures. It is not because they fit into the world as it was, but because they dared to create the world as it should be. In every era, there have been women who decided that silence was too expensive, that obedience was too heavy a burden, and that conformity was too small a space to contain their spirit. They paid with criticism, with exclusion, with sacrifice. Some paid with their freedom. Some paid with their lives. But in every case, their price purchased progress. Their rebellion became the foundation on which new rights, new freedoms, and new possibilities were built. That is the nature of legacy. It outlives the rebel, carrying forward the story they began. The price of rebellion may never feel fair. It demands too much from those who dare to challenge the rules, and too little from those who benefit from the system they oppose. But progress has always been born this way. Legacy has always been built on sacrifice. The rebels may not live to enjoy the world they fought for, but the world will never forget their fight. And though the cost is high, the return is immeasurable because rebellion, more than anything else, is the force that carves legacy into the pages of history. Authenticity is one of the most powerful forces a person can embody, yet it is often the most difficult to live by. From a young age, women are taught to seek approval from family, from teachers, from peers, from society at large. Approval becomes a currency, a way to measure worth and value. Be agreeable, and you will be liked. Be accommodating, and you will be accepted. Be well-behaved, and you will be praised. But approval is a fragile foundation. It shifts with every opinion, with every trend, with every expectation placed upon you. Authenticity, on the other hand, is solid. It is rooted in who you are, not in who others want you to be. And history remembers those who chose authenticity over approval, because authenticity is where true impact begins. Approval feels safe, but it is also limiting. When you live for approval, you adjust yourself to fit the standards of others. You speak in ways that won't offend. You act in ways that won't disrupt. You dream only within the boundaries of what others say is possible. It feels comfortable because it keeps you from standing out, but comfort has never created progress. Authenticity, however, is disruptive by nature. It refuses to bend simply to be accepted. It demands that you live in alignment with your values, even when those values are unpopular. It insists that you express your truth, even when your voice shakes. Authenticity is what separates those who blend into the background from those who carve their names into history. Authenticity requires courage because it will almost always cost you approval. When a woman chooses to speak her mind rather than say what others want to hear, she risks being criticized. When she pursues her vision instead of following the traditional path, she risks being misunderstood. When she refuses to compromise her values, she risks standing alone. But authenticity is not about the temporary comfort of fitting in. It is about the lasting fulfillment of living a life that reflects who you truly are. Approval gives you applause in the moment. Authenticity gives you legacy. Think about the women who became pioneers in their fields. They did not get there by chasing approval. They got there by being authentic to their passions and their purpose, even when society told them to stop. Marie Curie did not seek approval when she pursued her groundbreaking research in physics and chemistry. Approval would have told her that science was not a place for women. But authenticity told her that her curiosity, her intellect, and her dedication were her path. Today, her name is written in history as a Nobel Prize winner and a trailblazer. If she had chosen approval, her name might have never been known beyond her circle of peers. Authenticity made her unforgettable. Approval is fleeting, but authenticity endures. The world may resist your truth in the moment, but over time, authenticity has a way of breaking through. Many women who were once dismissed or even condemned for being too outspoken, too ambitious, or too rebellious are now celebrated as visionaries. What was once criticized becomes admired. That is the paradox of authenticity. It often costs you approval in your lifetime, but it earns you respect in the long run. Authenticity also creates connection in ways that approval never can. Approval is shallow. It is based on pleasing others. People may like you for what you do for them, but that kind of acceptance disappears the moment you stop meeting their expectations. Authenticity, however, resonates deeply. When you live authentically, you inspire others to do the same. You show people what it looks like to live free from the chains of expectation. Authenticity doesn't just liberate you, it liberates everyone who sees your example. It says to others, you don't have to shrink yourself to be loved. You don't have to silence yourself to be respected. You don't have to conform to be worthy. That kind of influence creates change far beyond yourself. Choosing authenticity over approval also means redefining success. For too long, success for women has been tied to how well they follow the rules, how agreeable they are, how smoothly they fit into the spaces created for them. But real success is not measured by how well you conform. It is measured by how boldly you live your truth. Authenticity means pursuing the work that fulfills you, not the work that impresses others. It means building relationships that honor your values, not relationships that simply look good from the outside. It means living in such a way that when you look back, you recognize yourself in every choice you made. Approval may give you recognition in the short term, but authenticity gives you peace in the long term. Living authentically requires saying no. No to the roles that do not align with your vision. No to the expectations that ask you to betray yourself. No to the definitions of womanhood, success, or worthiness that do not reflect your truth. Saying no is hard because it often disappoints others. But every no rooted in authenticity is also a yes to freedom, to purpose, to integrity. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, you strengthen the foundation of your identity. You build a life that is unshakable because it is not dependent on the ever-changing opinions of others. History has little interest in those who live their lives collecting approval. It does not remember the ones who kept quiet to avoid conflict, or those who sacrificed their identity to fit the mold. History remembers the authentic. It remembers the women who said what no one else dared to say, who pursued what no one else thought possible, who lived in alignment with who they were rather than who they were told to be. These women were not always celebrated in their lifetimes, but their authenticity carved a path for future generations to walk with confidence and courage. Every woman faces the choice between authenticity and approval every single day. Will you speak your truth even if it risks disapproval? Or will you stay silent to keep the peace? Will you follow the path that aligns with your heart, even if it means walking alone? Or will you follow the crowd to avoid standing out? Will you live for applause? Or will you live for impact? Approval may keep you comfortable, but authenticity is what will make you unforgettable. From the very beginning of life, we are conditioned to seek approval. Approval from our parents when we take our first steps, approval from teachers when we answer correctly, approval from peers when we fit in, approval from society when we follow the expected path. Approval feels like validation, like proof that we are worthy, but in truth, it is a fragile and temporary reward. The pursuit of approval comes at the cost of authenticity, because to gain approval, we often bend, shrink, or silence parts of ourselves. And while approval may bring applause in the moment, it is authenticity that builds a lasting legacy. Authenticity means showing up as you are, unfiltered and unapologetic. It is the decision to live by your values instead of the values imposed on you. It is refusing to wear the mask that pleases others while suffocating your own truth. The reason authenticity feels risky is because it often conflicts with what the world expects from us. The world tells women to be agreeable, polite, modest, and accommodating. Approval is granted when you play by these rules. But the women who made history did not earn their place by being agreeable. They were authentic to their convictions, even when it cost them acceptance, and it is precisely that authenticity that etched their names into history books. Approval is intoxicating. It feels good to be liked, to be praised, to be told that you are doing things the right way. But what does it mean to live a life built only on approval? It means constantly adjusting yourself to fit in, constantly questioning if you are enough, constantly living in fear of rejection. Approval is never permanent because the standards for it are always shifting. What people approve of today, they may condemn tomorrow. Authenticity, on the other hand, does not shift. It is rooted in identity, in values, in a deep understanding of who you are and what you stand for. It may not always bring approval, but it always brings alignment with yourself, and that alignment is priceless. History is filled with women who chose authenticity even when the price was high. Frida Kahlo painted her pain and her truth at a time when art was expected to be polished and restrained. Maya Angelou wrote her story with honesty in a world that expected silence about such realities. Neither of them lived for the approval of others, and both of them became icons because their authenticity resonated across generations. People connect to truth, not to perfection. Approval may win admiration for a moment, but authenticity earns respect for a lifetime. Authenticity also challenges the false sense of security that comes with approval. Approval makes you dependent on others for your sense of worth. You begin to measure yourself through the eyes of those around you. If they applaud, you feel good. If they criticize, you feel small, but authenticity removes that dependency. It says, I know who I am, whether you approve or not. That kind of confidence is unshakable because it is built on something internal rather than external. And when a woman embodies this, she not only liberates herself, but inspires others to do the same. Choosing authenticity is rarely easy. It can mean standing in the face of rejection. It can mean losing relationships with those who only valued you when you conformed. It can mean walking away from opportunities that require you to compromise who you are. But every time you choose authenticity over approval, you build a foundation of integrity. You create a life that reflects your true self, rather than one that is merely a reflection of what others want to see. And the impact of this is far greater than the fleeting comfort of being liked. Approval gives you a seat at the table, but authenticity builds the table itself. Approval allows you to blend into the crowd, but authenticity allows you to lead. Approval keeps you safe, but authenticity makes you significant. This is why authenticity is always more powerful. It has the ability to create change, to inspire, to connect on a deeper level. Approval is shallow, authenticity is profound. Approval pleases the moment, authenticity moves the future. Living authentically also means accepting that not everyone will like you, and that is not only okay, but necessary. If everyone approves of you, it means you have not truly stood for anything. Great leaders, innovators, and change makers are always polarizing because their authenticity disrupts the comfort of the status quo. It challenges the norms, the traditions, and the expectations that hold people back. To live authentically is to accept that disapproval is part of the journey, but it is also proof that you are creating waves rather than standing still. Women throughout history who lived authentically did not do so because it was easy. They did so because it was necessary. They knew that approval could never be the measure of their worth. They knew that authenticity, even when lonely, carried the power to open doors for those who would come after them. Their courage to live as themselves became the legacy that inspires us today. And every woman who chooses authenticity over approval continues to write that story. The world does not remember those who lived their lives chasing approval. Their names fade, their stories vanish, because there is nothing extraordinary about blending in. The world remembers the authentic ones, the women who risked rejection to live in truth, the women who chose integrity over applause, the women who refused to conform just to be liked. Approval fades. Authenticity endures. And it is authenticity, not approval, that writes history. History is not shaped by those who quietly nodded along, by those who silenced their voices to win approval, or by those who stayed within the lines drawn for them. It is shaped by the ones who chose authenticity over applause, who embraced courage over conformity, who accepted the price of defiance because they knew the reward was legacy. The truth is, the world does not remember the women who obeyed the rules. It remembers the women who rewrote them. The choice is never easy, but it is always clear live to be liked, or live to be remembered. The ones who change the world are the ones who refuse to trade their truth for comfort. The ones who understand that, well-behaved women seldom make history.